The soldiers found it on the third day of their patrol across the western valleys of Kepler 442b. Private First Class Marcus Chen was the first to spot the creature, half buried in the red sand near a collapsed rock formation. At first, he thought it was dead. The thing was massive, easily the size of a small shuttle, with thick armored plates covering its body and 6 powerful legs tucked beneath it. Its hide was a deep purple, almost black, and covered in what looked like crystalline spines that caught the dim light of the twin suns. "Sergeant Reyes," Marcus called over his comm unit, his voice tight with caution. "You need to see this." Sergeant Alina Reyes approached with her weapon raised, scanning the creature through her helmet's tactical display. The readout showed faint life signs, barely registering. Whatever this thing was, it was dying. "What the hell is that?" asked Corporal James Okonkwo, coming up behind them. He had been with the Colony Defense Force for 3 years and had seen plenty of strange alien wildlife on this planet, but nothing like this. "Never seen anything like it in the database," Reyes said. She lowered her weapon slightly, studying the creature. Its eyes were closed, or at least she assumed those massive dark spots on its head were eyes. A low, rumbling sound came from deep within its chest, like stones grinding together. "It's hurt," Marcus said, pointing to the creature's side. A massive wound ran along its flank, deep and still oozing dark fluid that pooled in the red sand beneath it. Something attacked it, something big. The team stood in silence for a moment. They had been sent to patrol this region after colonists reported strange sounds coming from the valley. The colony on Kepler 442b was still new, only established 2 years ago, and the humans were still learning about the planet's ecosystem. Most of the wildlife had proven harmless, or at least avoidable. But there were predators out here, things that hunted in the darkness between the twin sun cycles. "We should leave it," James said. "Our mission is patrol and report, not wildlife rescue." "It'll die if we leave it," Marcus replied. He knelt down closer to the creature, keeping his weapon ready. "Look at it. Whatever did this will probably come back to finish the job." "That's nature," James said. "We're not here to interfere with the natural order." Sergeant Reyes held up her hand for silence. She was staring at the creature, thinking. Their colony had struggled in the past year. Resources were thin, morale was lower. They had lost 3 colonists to predator attacks just last month. The colonial administration was considering requesting evacuation if things did not improve soon. But something about this creature made her pause. The way it lay there, breathing slowly, almost peacefully despite its wounds. It was not trying to attack them. It was not even trying to run. It seemed to know somehow that it was at their mercy. "Help me clear the sand from around it," Reyes said finally. James stared at her. "Sergeant, you can't be serious." "That's an order, Corporal." The 3 soldiers worked to clear the debris from around the creature. As they did, they discovered more wounds, older ones that had started to heal. Whatever this creature was, it had been fighting something for a long time, and losing. Marcus found something else too. Tucked against the creature's belly, protected by its massive body, were 3 small forms. They were dead, he realized with a sick feeling. Small versions of the adult, barely the size of dogs. They had been crushed when the rock formation collapsed. "It was protecting them," he said quietly. "It's young. It was protecting its young." Sergeant Reyes stood up and looked at the creature with new eyes. A parent. This massive, terrifying alien monster was just a parent trying to protect its children, and it had failed. "We're taking it back to the colony," she decided. "The commander will never approve this," James protested. "Then I'll deal with the commander. Right now, we have a chance to do something other than kill and survive. We can save something. Maybe that matters." They called for extraction, and 2 hours later, a heavy transport shuttle arrived. The pilot, a grizzled veteran named Thomas Wright, took one look at the creature and let out a low whistle. "You want me to load that onto my bird?" he asked. "That's the idea," Reyes replied. You know this is insane, right? Just do it, Thomas. With considerable effort, they managed to load the unconscious creature onto the transport. It barely fit, its bulk taking up the entire cargo hold. During the flight back to the colony, Marcus stayed with it, monitoring its vital signs through a portable scanner. The creature's breathing was shallow but steady. Its eyes remained closed. But at one point during the flight, one of its massive clawed feet twitched, brushing against Marcus's leg. He froze, expecting an attack, but the foot just rested there almost gently before falling still again. When they arrived at Colony Hope, as the settlement was optimistically named, a crowd had gathered on the landing pad. Word had spread fast about what the patrol team was bringing back. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood at the front, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. "Sergeant Reyes," she said as Alina descended from the transport, "would you like to explain why you've brought a Class 7 Predator into my colony?" "It's wounded, Commander. It was protecting its young when something attacked it. The young didn't survive." Commander Mitchell's expression softened slightly, but her posture remained rigid. "That's tragic, but it doesn't explain why it's here instead of where you found it." "Because it would have died, ma'am, and because I think we made a choice when we founded this colony, a choice to be more than just survivors, to be settlers, to build something. Part of building something is understanding the world we're trying to build it on." The commander was silent for a long moment. Behind her, colonists whispered among themselves, some with fear, others with curiosity. Children tried to peer around adults to catch a glimpse of the creature. "And if it wakes up and decides to eat us all?" Mitchell asked. "Then we'll deal with it, but I don't think that's what will happen." "Based on what evidence?" Marcus stepped forward. "Based on the fact that it had every opportunity to attack us and didn't. Based on the fact that it was using its body to shield its dead offspring. This creature isn't a mindless predator, Commander. It's something more." Commander Mitchell studied the young soldier, then looked at the creature in the cargo hold. It lay there, massive and alien and strange, but also somehow vulnerable. She had seen many things in her years of military service and colonial administration. She had learned to trust her instincts about people. And right now, her instincts were telling her that these soldiers were onto something. "Fine," she said at last. "We'll take it to the medical facility and try to treat its wounds. But the moment it shows any sign of aggression, we put it down. Understood?" "Understood, Commander," Reyes replied. They moved the creature to the colony's largest medical bay, which had been designed to handle construction accidents and mining injuries, not alien wildlife rehabilitation. Dr. Chen, the colony's chief medical officer and also Marcus's mother, took one look at the creature and sighed. "You know I didn't go to medical school for this, right?" she said. "We'll figure it out together," Marcus replied with a grin. For the next 3 days, the medical team worked around the clock to save the creature's life. They had to guess at most of the treatment, adapting human medical techniques to alien physiology. They cleaned the wounds, applied synthetic tissue grafts, and administered broad-spectrum antibiotics that they hoped would work on whatever infection had set into the damaged tissue. Throughout it all, the creature remained unconscious. Its breathing grew steadier, its vital signs improved, but it showed no signs of waking. Guards stood at the entrance to the medical bay at all times, weapons ready, but the expected attack never came. On the 4th day, the creature opened its eyes. Marcus was alone with it when it happened. He had been checking the creature's bandages when those massive dark spots on its head suddenly split open, revealing eyes that were deep gold with vertical pupils, like a cat's. They focused on Marcus, studying him with an intelligence that made his breath catch in his throat. "Hey there," Marcus said softly, keeping his hands where the creature could see them. "Easy, nobody's going to hurt you." The creature made a sound, deep and rumbling. Not threatening, Marcus realized, questioning. It was asking something. "You're in our colony. he continued, speaking slowly and clearly even though he knew the creature couldn't understand his words. "We found you wounded in the valley. We brought you here and treated your injuries. You're safe now." The golden eyes blinked slowly. Then, to Marcus's amazement, the creature lowered its massive head until it rested on the medical bay floor, inches from his feet. It let out a long breath, like a sigh, and closed its eyes again. It was a gesture of trust, Marcus realized. This creature, this powerful alien predator, had just shown him that it trusted him, that it understood somehow that he had helped it. He reached out slowly and placed his hand on the creature's snout. The crystalline spines were warm to the touch, almost vibrating slightly under his fingers. The creature did not move. It just lay there, accepting his touch. "I think we're going to be okay," Marcus whispered. Outside the medical bay, the colony went about its daily routines, unaware that everything was about to change. The twin suns began their slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. And in a small medical facility on the edge of human civilization, a bond was being formed that would reshape the future of colony hope forever. The first real test came a week after the creature woke up. It had recovered enough to move around, though Dr. Chen insisted it stay in the medical bay for observation. The colonists had started calling it various names, but the one that stuck was Chunk, because of its massive, chunky build. It was not a dignified name for such an impressive creature, but it seemed to fit. Chunk had proven to be surprisingly docile. It allowed the medical team to examine it, poke and prod at its wounds, and take samples of its blood and tissue for analysis. It ate the rations they offered it, though it clearly preferred fresh meat when they could provide it. And it seemed to enjoy the company of the humans who visited it, especially Marcus, who came by every day after his patrol shifts. But not everyone in the colony was happy about the arrangement. "This is madness," said Robert Keller, the colony's head of security, during a council meeting. "We have a Class 7 predator living in our medical facility, one of the most dangerous animals on this planet, and we're treating it like a pet." "It hasn't shown any aggression," Commander Mitchell pointed out. It hasn't shown any aggression yet, but what happens when it decides it's hungry and the rations aren't enough? What happens when it gets bored and wants to hunt? "I don't think that's going to happen," Marcus said. He had been invited to the meeting to provide his perspective, though he was well aware that he was the lowest-ranking person in the room. Keller turned to him with barely concealed irritation. "And what makes you an expert on alien predator behavior, Private?" "I'm not an expert, but I've spent more time with Chunk than anyone else, and I've noticed some things. It's not just an animal. It thinks, it plans, it understands more than we give it credit for. All the more reason to be afraid of it. Or all the more reason to try to communicate with it." The council debated for another hour before reaching a compromise. Chunk would be allowed to remain in the colony, but under strict supervision. A containment field would be set up around its designated area, and guards would be posted at all times. If it showed any signs of aggression, it would be immediately sedated and, if necessary, terminated. Marcus accepted the compromise, though he thought the containment field was overkill. But he understood the fear. He had felt it himself when he first saw Chunk in the valley. It was hard to look at something so large and alien and not feel afraid. The test came 3 nights later. Marcus was on night patrol when the alarm started blaring. He sprinted toward the colony center, where lights were flashing and people were screaming. When he arrived, he saw what had triggered the panic. 3 creatures had breached the colony's outer perimeter. They were smaller than Chunk, but still massive by human standards, each one the size of a large car. They had long, sinuous bodies covered in dark scales and mouths filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness. "Stalkers," someone yelled, 3 of them. Stalkers were one of the planet's apex predators, pack hunters that usually avoided the colony because of the noise and lights. but something had drawn them in tonight. Maybe hunger, maybe curiosity, or maybe something else entirely. The colony's defenses activated, but the stalkers were fast. They dodged the automated turrets, weaving between buildings with terrifying speed. One of them grabbed a colonist who had been running for shelter and dragged them into the shadows. Marcus raised his weapon and fired, but the stalker was already gone. He could hear more screaming from different parts of the colony. The pack had split up, attacking from multiple directions. Then he heard something else, a roar that shook the ground beneath his feet, a roar that came from the medical bay. Chunk had broken through the containment field. Marcus watched as the massive creature emerged from the facility, its crystalline spines glowing with an inner light. Its golden eyes scanned the chaos around it, taking in the running colonists, the flashing alarms, the stalkers hunting in the darkness. Then it moved. Marcus had never seen anything move so fast. Chunk launched itself toward the nearest stalker with a speed that seemed impossible for something its size. It caught the smaller predator in mid-leap and slammed it into the ground with enough force to crack the pavement. The stalker tried to fight back, snapping at Chunk's legs with its teeth, but Chunk was stronger, much stronger. It pinned the stalker down and drove its crystalline spines into the creature's neck. The stalker went still. The other two stalkers broke off their attacks and turned to face the new threat. They circled Chunk warily, recognizing a predator even more dangerous than themselves. For a moment, the three creatures stood frozen, a standoff between hunters. Then Chunk roared again, and the stalkers ran. They fled into the darkness beyond the colony's lights, vanishing into the wilderness from which they came. Chunk watched them go, its body tense and ready. Only when they were completely gone did it relax, lowering its massive head and letting out a breath. Marcus approached slowly, his weapon lowered. "Chunk, you okay?" The creature turned to look at him. Those golden eyes, usually calm and curious, were now fierce and alert. But as Chunk recognized Marcus, the fierceness faded. It made a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. "You saved us," Marcus said, reaching out to touch Chunk's snout. "You broke out of containment to save us." Chunk leaned into his touch, closing its eyes. Around them, the colony was in chaos. People were crying, calling for help, trying to account for the missing. But they were also starting to notice what had happened. They were starting to understand that the creature they had feared had just risked its life to protect them. Commander Mitchell arrived, her face pale but composed. She took in the scene with a single glance, from the dead stalker to Chunk standing protectively near the human survivors. "Private Chen," she said slowly, "did that creature just save our colony?" "Yes, ma'am, I believe it did." Mitchell stared at Chunk for a long moment. The creature stared back, those intelligent golden eyes meeting her gaze without fear or hostility. There was something in that gaze, she realized, something that went beyond animal instinct, something that looked almost like loyalty. "Get me the council on emergency call," she said to her aide. "I think we need to have another discussion about our guest." Chunk stayed close to Marcus for the rest of the night, following him as he helped with the recovery efforts. People who had been afraid of the creature now looked at it with something else in their eyes: wonder, gratitude, hope. One small girl, no more than 5 years old, broke away from her parents and walked up to Chunk. The creature lowered its head to her level, making itself less intimidating. The girl reached out with a tiny hand and patted its snout. "Thank you," she said simply. Chunk made that purring sound again, and something in the colony shifted, something fundamental and permanent. The alien monster they had feared was not a monster at all. It was a protector, and from that night forward, everything would be different. The colonists of Colony Hope began to see Chunk in a new light after the stalker attack. Where once there had been fear and suspicion, there was now curiosity and respect. Children who had been warned to stay away from the medical bay now begged their parents to let them visit the creature. Adults who had demanded Chunk's removal now nodded to it when they passed, a gesture of acknowledgement. Robert Keller, the head of security, was the last to come around. He had been the strongest voice against keeping Chunk in the colony, and his pride made it difficult to admit he had been wrong, but even he could not deny what he had seen that night. A week after the attack, he found Marcus in the creature's new enclosure. The containment field had been deactivated and replaced with a simple fence that Chunk could easily break through if it wanted. It was a symbolic barrier, a sign of trust on both sides. "Private Chen," Keller said, his voice gruff. Marcus stood to attention. "Sir." Keller waved him at ease and approached the fence. Chunk was lying in the center of the enclosure, basking in the light of the twin suns. It opened one golden eye to look at the security chief, then closed it again, apparently deciding he was not a threat. "I wanted to say that I was wrong," Keller said, the words clearly difficult for him. "About the creature, about what we should do with it." Marcus nodded, but said nothing. He had learned that sometimes it was better to let people speak without interruption. "I've been doing this job for 20 years, Keller continued. "I've seen a lot of things, learned a lot of lessons, and one of those lessons is that you can't trust anything that can kill you. Everything with claws and teeth will eventually use them, given the right circumstances." "But," Marcus prompted. "But I've never seen anything like what happened that night. That creature didn't have to protect us. It could have escaped into the wilderness and never looked back. Instead, it fought for us. It killed to protect us." Keller shook his head. "I don't understand it, but I can't deny it either." "I think Chunk understands more than we realize," Marcus said. "I think it knows that we saved its life, and I think it has chosen to repay that debt." "Chosen? You make it sound like it has free will." "Don't you think it does?" Keller looked at Chunk, studying the creature's massive form. The crystalline spines that covered its body caught the sunlight and scattered it into tiny rainbows. It was beautiful in a strange and alien way. "Maybe," he admitted, "maybe it does." Over the following months, Chunk became an unofficial member of the colony. It accompanied patrol teams on their rounds, its presence deterring any predators that might otherwise have attacked. It helped with heavy lifting during construction projects, moving materials that would have required machinery. It even played with the children, letting them climb on its back and slide down its sides while it rumbled with what could only be described as laughter. But its primary role was as guardian. The Colony Council made it official after a vote that was nearly unanimous. Chunk was designated as Colony Hope's first non-human security asset, with all the rights and protections that entailed. It was a historic moment, the first time humans had formally recognized an alien creature as something more than wildlife. Marcus was given a new assignment, Chunk's handler and liaison. It was a made-up position, invented specifically for this unique situation, but Marcus took it seriously. He spent hours every day with the creature, learning to understand its moods and behaviors, developing a communication system based on sounds and gestures. Chunk proved to be a quick learner. Within weeks, it could understand basic commands and respond to simple questions. A low rumble meant yes. A high-pitched whine meant no. A specific sequence of clicks meant danger approaching. And when it pressed its snout against someone's chest, that meant affection. "You're really bonding with that thing, aren't you?" his mother asked one evening. Marcus smiled. "Is that professional concern or maternal worry?" "Both, honestly. You spend more time with Chunk than you do with other humans. I worry about you becoming too isolated." "Chunk isn't isolation, Mom. Chunk is friendship, just a different kind of friendship than I'm used to." Dr. Chen studied her son, seeing the changes in him since the creature arrived. He seemed more confident, more purposeful. The aimlessness that had worried her when they first arrived on Kepler 442b had been replaced by a sense of mission. "Just be careful," she said finally. "We still don't fully understand that creature's biology or psychology. What seems like affection might be something else entirely. It's not, Marcus said with certainty. I know it's not. The relationship between human and alien continued to deepen. Marcus learned that Chunk was female, not that gender meant the same thing to her species as it did to humans. He learned that her species was called something that translated roughly to stone singers because of the crystalline structures that grew on their bodies. He learned that she had been the last of her family, hunted by the stalkers until she had no one left to protect. Until now. You've adopted us, haven't you? Marcus asked one night, sitting against Chunk's warm flank and looking up at the alien stars. Just like we adopted you. Chunk made a sound that was unmistakably affirmative. We're your family now, the whole colony. Another affirmative sound, followed by the pressing of her snout against his chest. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He had left everything behind to come to this planet. His friends, his extended family, everything familiar. He had felt like an exile, cast out to the edges of human civilization. But now, sitting beside this impossible creature, he felt like he had finally found where he belonged. The first anniversary of Chunk's arrival was marked by a colony-wide celebration. The day was declared a holiday, with games and feasts and fireworks that lit up the sky above Colony Hope. Chunk was the guest of honor, wearing a ceremonial wreath of flowers around her neck that the children had made for her. Commander Mitchell gave a speech about unity and understanding, about looking beyond fear to find common ground. She talked about how the colony had changed in the past year, how morale had improved, how the predator attacks had all but stopped. She credited much of this to Chunk and to the soldiers who had had the courage to bring her home. 1 year ago, we took a chance, Mitchell said. We chose to save a life instead of ending it. We chose to trust instead of fear, and that choice has made all the difference. Today, we are not just surviving on this planet. We are thriving, and we have our guardian to thank for that. The crowd cheered, and Chunk raised her head, basking in the attention. She had come to enjoy these gatherings, the noise and excitement of human celebration. It was so different from the quiet solitude of her previous life. But the celebration was interrupted by an urgent message from the orbital station. Commander Mitchell, the communication officer, announced over the public address system, "We have incoming ships, multiple contacts heading directly for the colony." The festive mood evaporated instantly. Ships meant visitors, and visitors could mean many things. Trade ships from other colonies, supply vessels from Earth, or something else entirely. "What's their identification?" Mitchell demanded. "Unknown, ma'am. They're not responding to our hails, and their configuration. It doesn't match anything in our database." Alien ships. For the first time in the colony's history, they were being visited by an alien civilization. The colonists gathered in the central square, watching the sky with a mixture of fear and excitement. Marcus stood beside Chunk, one hand resting on her flank. He could feel the tension in her muscles, the readiness for danger. "Easy," he murmured. "We don't know if they're hostile yet." But Chunk's crystalline spines were beginning to glow, a sign of agitation. She sensed something that the humans could not. The ships descended through the atmosphere, 3 silver vessels that gleamed in the light of the twin suns. They were elegant and strange, with curves and angles that seemed to defy conventional engineering. They landed in a triangular formation outside the colony's perimeter, and for a long moment nothing happened. Then the hatches opened, and the aliens emerged. They were tall and slender, with grayish-blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost liquid. They wore no obvious clothing, but were covered in intricate patterns that might have been tattoos or natural markings. One of them, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward and raised a hand in what appeared to be a gesture of greeting. Then it spoke, and its voice was like wind chimes in a storm. The colony's translation software struggled with the alien language, but eventually, A rough approximation came through the speakers. "We come in peace. We seek the one who sings to stone." Marcus felt Chunk stiffen beside him. Her crystalline spines flared brighter, and she let out a low, rumbling sound that echoed across the square. The alien turned toward her, and its large eyes widened. It said something in its own language, too fast for the translation software to catch. The other aliens reacted with what looked like shock. "What's happening?" Marcus whispered. The answer came when the lead alien bowed deeply to Chunk, a gesture of unmistakable reverence. "The last of the stone singers," the translation came through. "We have searched for you across many stars. Your kind created us. You are our mothers, our shapers, and we thought you were all gone." Chunk made a sound that Marcus had never heard before. It was high and keening, filled with an emotion that needed no translation. Grief, recognition, hope. The alien visitors were called the Veiled Ones, and their story was one of the most remarkable things the colonists had ever heard. They explained, through increasingly accurate translations, that their species had been created by the Stone Singers thousands of years ago. The Stone Singers had been great builders and shapers, capable of manipulating matter and energy in ways that seemed like magic to the Veiled Ones. But the Stone Singers had been peaceful, perhaps too peaceful. When a great predator species had swept across the galaxy, they had been hunted to near extinction. The Veiled Ones had tried to protect their creators, but they were too few and too weak. One by one, the Stone Singers had fallen, until the Veiled Ones believed none remained. "We have searched for millennia," the lead alien, whose name translated roughly to Silver Voice, explained. "Every world that might harbor a survivor we have visited. We never lost hope, and now here at the edge of explored space we find the last of our mothers." Chunk listened to this explanation with an intensity that Marcus had never seen from her. Her golden eyes were fixed on Silver Voice, drinking in every word. And when the alien finished speaking, she rose to her full height and made a sound that resonated through the ground itself. "She accepts you," Marcus said, somehow understanding. "She acknowledges you as her children." Silver Voice and the other Veiled Ones dropped to their knees, overcome with emotion. For a species that had spent thousands of years searching for their lost creators, this moment was beyond anything they had dared to hope for. But with this reunion came complications. "They want her to come with them," Commander Mitchell reported to the Colony Council 2 days later. "They have ships, resources, entire worlds dedicated to preserving Stone Singer culture. They can offer her a life among her own kind, or at least among those who remember her kind." "What does Chunk want?" Marcus asked. "That's the question, isn't it? The Veiled Ones have asked for time to communicate with her directly. They have technology that might allow for clearer communication than our systems can manage." The Council approved the request, and for 3 days, Chunk and the Veiled Ones communicated in a chamber specially prepared for the purpose. Crystals of various colors were arranged in patterns that seemed random to human eyes but clearly meant something to the participants. Sounds filled the chamber, some audible, some beyond human hearing. Marcus was not allowed inside, a fact that caused him more anxiety than he wanted to admit. He spent those 3 days packing outside the chamber, trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. What if Chunk decided to leave? What if she chose her newfound children over her adopted family? On the 4th day, the chamber doors opened, and Chunk emerged. She walked directly to Marcus and pressed her snout against his chest. "What did you decide?" he asked, his voice rough. Chunk made a series of sounds, and one of the Veiled Ones translated. "She says that she was alone for a very long time. She watched her family die. She thought she would die alone, forgotten and unmourned. But then she found you. You saved her life and gave her something to live for. You gave her a new family when she thought she would never have one again." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. "She says that she will not abandon her family. She will not leave the humans who took her in and trusted her. She will not leave you, Marcus Chen." Tears spilled down Marcus's face, and he wrapped his arms around Chunk's massive neck. She rumbled with pleasure, her crystalline spines dimming to a gentle glow. But the translation continued. She also recognizes the veiled ones as her children. She will not abandon them either. She proposes a solution. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Chunk would remain on Kepler 442b as the guardian of Colony Hope, but the veiled ones would establish an embassy nearby, a permanent presence that would allow for ongoing communication and cultural exchange. Over time, more Stone Singer knowledge could be shared, more connections forged. It was the beginning of something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. A partnership between three species, humans and veiled ones and the last Stone Singer, a family of choice rather than biology. Commander Mitchell announced the arrangement at a colony assembly, and the cheers that followed echoed across the settlement. The colonists had come to this distant world seeking a new home, and they had found more than they ever imagined. They had found friendship. They had found wonder. They had found a future that was bigger than any of them had dared to dream. In the weeks that followed, the Veiled One Embassy took shape near the colony. The alien architecture was beautiful and strange, towers of crystal and metal that sang in the wind. Humans and Veiled Ones began to mingle, sharing knowledge and stories and laughter. Children from the colony played with young Veiled Ones, their games transcending language barriers. And at the heart of it all was Chunk, the last Stone Singer, the unexpected bridge between worlds. Marcus continued his role as her handler, though the title seemed inadequate now. They were partners, companions, family in every way that mattered. He had learned to understand her moods through the glow of her crystalline spines, to interpret her sounds with increasing accuracy, to anticipate her needs before she expressed them. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, Marcus sat with Chunk on a hill overlooking the colony. The embassy gleamed in the distance, and the sounds of life and laughter drifted up from below. "We came here looking for a new home," Marcus said, "and we found you. I think that was the best thing that could have happened to us." Chunk made a sound of agreement. "The Veiled Ones say that your kind used to shape worlds, that you could sing mountains into existence and calm storms with a thought. Do you remember any of that?" A long pause, then a sound that was almost melancholy. "You don't remember, but maybe, with time, you'll relearn. Maybe the Veiled Ones can help you remember who you used to be." Chunk turned her golden eyes to him, and in that gaze Marcus saw something profound. She did not need to remember who she used to be. She knew who she was now. She was the guardian of Colony Hope. She was the mother of the Veiled Ones. She was Marcus's friend and companion. She was home. The story of Chunk spread across human space in the years that followed. It became a legend, a tale told to children about the power of compassion and the possibility of connection across the vast gulf of species and cultures. Other colonies reported similar experiences, finding ways to coexist with the alien life forms on their worlds instead of simply conquering or destroying them. A new philosophy emerged, one that saw humanity's role in the galaxy not as conquerors or colonizers, but as partners and neighbors. It was not always easy. There were conflicts and misunderstandings, setbacks and tragedies, but there was also progress, gradual and steady. And it all started with one group of soldiers who chose to save a dying creature instead of leaving it to die. Sergeant Alina Reyes eventually became Commander Reyes, taking over Colony Hope when Mitchell retired. She never forgot the lesson she learned in that valley, the day she decided to take a chance on something unknown. It shaped every decision she made for the rest of her career. Corporal James Okonkwo became the colony's head of security, working alongside Veiled One counterparts to protect the growing settlement. He and Chunk developed a grudging respect for each other, though he never quite got over his initial wariness. Some instincts were hard to change. Dr. Chen continued her medical research, now supplemented by veiled one knowledge. Her studies of stone singer biology led to breakthroughs in regenerative medicine that saved countless lives across human space. And Marcus, he stayed with Chunk for the rest of his life. They patrolled together, played together, sat together under alien stars and watched the universe spin around them. When he was old and gray, she was still there, unchanged by the passage of time, her crystalline spines glowing as brightly as ever. On his final day, Marcus sat with Chunk one last time on their hill overlooking the colony. It was much larger now, a thriving city where once there had been only a handful of struggling settlers. Ships came and went regularly, bringing visitors from across the galaxy to see the famous partnership between human and stone singer. "I'm glad we found you," Marcus said, his voice thin and tired. "I'm glad we took that chance." Chunk pressed her snout against his chest, gentle as always. "Take care of them for me. The colony, the veiled ones, all of it. They're your family now. They'll need you when I'm gone." A sound of distress, of denial. "Hey, none of that. We both knew this day would come. Humans don't live as long as stone singers, but that's okay. What matters is what we do with the time we have, and I've had a good life. The best life I could have asked for, and a lot of that is because of you." He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the creature who had been his constant companion for so many years. His friend, his family. "Thank you, Chunk, for everything." The last thing he felt was her rumbling purr, a sound of love that transcended species and language and time itself. Chunk buried Marcus on the hill where they used to sit together. She stood vigil over his grave for 7 days and 7 nights, neither eating nor sleeping, her crystalline spines glowing with a soft, sorrowful light. Then she returned to her duties. The years passed, and Colony Hope became a legend. Other colonies rose and fell, but Hope endured, protected by its guardian. Generations of children grew up hearing stories about Chunk, about the soldiers who saved her, about the unlikely family that formed on a distant world. And every night, as the twin suns set and the stars came out, a massive creature with crystalline spines and golden eyes climbed to a hill overlooking the city. She lay down beside an ancient grave marker and looked up at the sky. She was still waiting, still watching, still guarding, because that was what family did.